Hi, everybody. My name is Denis Godlewski, and I'm the regional coordinator of ITPC in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. And we are here today with our own very loved one, Solange Baptist Simon, who is the executive director of ITPC Global. Woo! Thanks for finding the time. I know your schedule is super packed. How was your conference so far?
I don't know what day it is. So I think it's, genuinely, I don't know what day it is. The other day I was speaking, I didn't know what year it was. So I think I've improved. So we're in 2024. I think it's Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also.
See, so that's exactly how it's going. It's a lot, but I'm happy to be here. I think it's important that ITPC showed up to this conference.
What is our plan for the conference? What is ITPC plan to the conference? If you can share with the guys from Eastern Europe.
Yeah, so we always try to make a plan for the conference, but then you come to the conference and then you make the real plan. And each day you make the plan. So you have to see who said what are the leaders saying, what's the tone, the temperature, and then you kind of really strategically align yourself. We have a few speaking events. We have some oral poster presentations. We have the Artivism booth, all the different spaces that we kind of try to occupy. But then it's the interventions, the actions, and the questions that you can ask in specific meetings, even if you don't have a speaking platform. So we're just trying to make sure that we're able to influence the community, to make sure that the community perspective is brought into sometimes more clinical spaces, more blah blah spaces of politics, to make sure that people actually understand what the community is saying. What is the lived reality? Because they often lose touch with the policy level. And then the clinicians are living in their own world. This is why I'm wearing my stethoscope.
Okay.
To show us that we're keeping the pulse on the community. I have a white lab coat as well. When we had the white coat action at the plenary. But I get hot, so I took it off.
Yes, and you can see the white coat action below in our thread in Facebook.
Yes.
So subscribe to our Facebook and YouTube. It's all there.
It's well done.
Yeah. So what are the main topics that we cover with all these? And specifically, first of all, what is Artivism booth? Because people might not know. And then what are our topics? What are our priority topics here?
Okay, so maybe I'll start with the booth. So normally ITPC would have a treatment networking zone and do that in collaboration with other partners. That was submitted. Not sure what's going on with the IAS, but we did not get a treatment activism booth, treatment access booth this year. So we are making sure that in the Artivism booth, we do everything that we can. So it's sort of art activism. If you could put those two words together in English, you get Artivism.
Yep.
And it's all the strong, clear messaging that communities have had over the periods of time, and any new messages that we want to put out. So it may be a T-shirt, it could be a poster, any way you want to express that, which is a clear message from the community. Anyone is welcome in that booth to do that.
Perfect.
And then in terms of the topics, we are specifically really thinking about community-led monitoring. There was a pre-conference on community-led monitoring. There was also a pre-conference on implementation science, and we spoke about community-led science and who owns science. And that kind of fed really well into our white coat action of saying, who is an expert?
Yeah.
And who are these experts that we're supposed to trust when you are in fact living the experience? And why is my lived experience and my expertise of applying science to that not as valid as somebody in a PhD or who has tenure at university or working in a lab? We also have some work on IP, intellectual property. So we had a 10-year anniversary of our Make Medicines Affordable consortium. We had a beautiful celebration of work.
10 years already. Wow.
Right? And then hearing Veriano speak at the end saying, this is just coming in from the bigger wave that has been there for almost 30 years, right? So we're really standing here. We're at the conference, but we're standing on the backs of some giants that some of have also passed away. And then this, access to medicines work that we've been doing. So that was another big segment of our work. We have a few oral posters that are related to that theme. We also have some actions related to ensuring that there are no access barriers to getting the medicines that we need and even the diagnostics that we need. So looking, where's our CD4? We're looking at the cost of and access in terms of countries for lenacapavir and other kinds of new technologies that are coming out.
Yeah, perfect. Another question related to the conference, because people keep saying like, okay, this is just like people saying things like circus, this is like a Muppet show or whatever. Like, I'm not going to attend. It's not even relevant anymore. It's all about the money. It's commercial. So, do you think the conferences still have the relevance to the reality of the ongoing AIDS agenda, to things on the ground? Is conference reflecting what's going on? Is it still important?
I am not sure. I think the IAS probably needs to take a step back and see if their finger is actually on the pulse. I think they're a little deaf to what is actually happening on the ground. The fact that I really haven't heard enough about the intersection between health and climate, I think is interesting. I also haven't heard, it's almost like we're still in our HIV strict lanes. We have a prevention meeting, we have a treatment meeting, we have an IP meeting, and then we have some sessions around that.
Mhm.
But what in this kind of aligns to ITPC's current strategy, which is how do you build on the 41 years of HIV legacy, building the architecture of the healthcare system, saying that science and evidence is the way to go, putting ambition into our strategic thinking, because the what do you call those things? The targets for diabetes is 60, 60, 60.
Yeah.
We had 95, right?
Yeah.
Like it's
I
a
didn't,
certain
I didn't
yeah,
hear about 60,
no.
60, 60.
There is
Is it?
ambition that HIV has and the ability to influence in terms of governance and where's the money, and we want to be in the delegation for the multilaterals.
Yeah.
There's a certain thing that HIV has that it doesn't know that it has. I think because you're living in it, you're not aware of it. That can be applied to other spaces. And I think that's where the IAS probably needs to start thinking. So we don't want to dilute HIV because the work is still to be done, right?
Mhm.
We still don't have access. We still have prevention technologies that are coming out, but pretending that it's for everybody when we know it's not the case. We still have issues around communities and their lead interventions not being funded, their work not being as valued. So we still have work that needs to be done. And in terms of choice for women, there's a whole bunch of stuff. There was a KP conference for the first time.
Really?
So there, yes. So this is the work that needs to be done, and we're really happy that they're doing that. But how do you also respond to what communities are saying, which is, I'm not taking my medicine because it's not really important at this point because I have to feed my children. I've lost my house because of a cyclone or because of war. Like you are in survival mode. And so right now you want to talk about, I don't know, whatever pill and what's your viral load and did you get, people are dealing with the realities in front of them. So I think there needs to be a bit more shift to merge. And that's what ITPC did. It wasn't easy. How do you, people will say you have scope creep. What are you now, a climate expert? No. Are you following the money in climate? There's not a lot of money in climate. The money is in up there. It's not in communities.
I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Because it's related. ITPC has a new strategic plan, and
Okay.
it's for a long period of time, which on one hand, in our shifting reality, seems very ambitious. On the other hand, in this plan, we see things like climate, as you mentioned it several times, and it's like other diseases and so on and so forth. Is it because the AIDS funding is shrinking or not? And yes, or is it because of something that I heard yesterday? I was moderating a discussion with a representative of WHO,
Yeah.
and she said, she said something like, we cannot afford the luxury of speaking about purely AIDS, purely hepatitis, purely tuberculosis. There will be like unifying things like universal health coverage and stuff. So we have to make sure these things are reflected there. So what is our strategic plan about? What was the rationale behind it? What are the goals?
Yeah, no, I would say our strategic plan was a reflection of really having to listen to what communities are saying. I've been in HIV for a long time, and we often come from the treatment aspect and we talk about the other things, right? Because our entry point has been treatment access. And you talk about treatment access, but it's almost like literally shoving a pill down someone's throat. I'm telling you, you need to take medicine. Here's the thing I think you need to take. When people are actually also saying, they're like, yes, you're right. I think I need to do this for my health. But I'm also telling you, I don't have food. I'm also telling you that my children are not safe. As a woman, I don't feel safe. So there are things that have always happened that we kind of say, yes, but we want to make sure that you have your medicine, right? Also, you want to make sure your viral load is okay, but then you have a problem with a cardiac event or your blood pressure or diabetes. We're like, it cannot only be what we think is important. Our ITPC's DNA has been listening to communities. That's the DNA. The DNA was not necessarily just about HIV, and making sure that the people who are affected by a particular issue had a seat at the table to meaningfully engage and bring about solutions to what their world was, to change and influence their own lived experience. And so that is at the heart of who ITPC is. So at the end of the day, yes, we are working in HIV completely. The people who are living with HIV and dealing with the issues on the ground are saying, we need more help. Because we do not know how to get insulin. We're still taking vials. Why can't we get the best medicine?
Yeah.
Isn't that what we said for optimal access to ARVs?
Absolutely.
Why are we then going to say, no, sorry, you could go find somebody else to do that? We're only working in HIV.
Yeah.
We have to be responsive to the needs of communities. That's what we've always said. So how do you build on the legacy that ITPC has had for 20 years in a movement that has been there for 40 years, right? And apply it to where we're going now? We cannot ignore the climate impacts on health.
Okay.
The climate impact. Because you have now mosquitoes popping up where they shouldn't. You have cyclones, what they call global.
You mean mosquitoes with malaria or dengue?
Mosquitoes with dengue. There's even an outbreak in Germany. There were warnings coming here because of the heat.
My God.
There was, I think it was not dengue, but another kind of disease-bearing mosquito. But the point is, there's what they call global weirding, which means weird things are happening in the climate space, which is now normal. You have floods in Dubai. You have a cyclone out of time. You know, people say, oh, it's summer. Can't wait for winter. And you're waiting for a specific month. What month?
Yeah.
In South Africa, it was -3 one day and then 30 degrees the next day. So children are now having to go to school earlier in the day in India because it's so hot. Imagine having a baby in that context. So all sorts of things happen to a mother who is now pregnant when you have the extreme heat, right? So we're talking about what are the effects, and even the Global Fund and all of the multilaterals are having this conversation. We are Global Fund for HIV, TB, and malaria, right? But we now are hearing of their potential work on an investment for health and climate.
Yeah.
Because you can no longer ignore the impacts on health from climate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think that's very comprehensive explanation.
Okay, sorry, I don't mean to go on and
No.
on about it.
No. I like that you speak passionately about it.
Yeah,
like,
because if you have a cyclone,
you have a soul in
if
what
you
you're
have
saying.
a cyclone, your home is destroyed, and you are now drinking water that is born with cholera.
Yeah.
What am I trying to tell you about? Let's make sure your viral load test is received. You don't have a house.
All right, a couple more minutes on this debate, but so why can't we just build connections with some other big funds that are like working on clean water and on housing, and say like, look, this is our partner. They will help you to get clean water, and we'll help you with HIV treatment. So why have we chosen the path of, doing it ourselves, or haven't we?
So we are not now climate experts.
Yeah.
That's not what we're saying, right?
Yeah.
We're saying we are change makers, we are researchers, we are experts, and we are activists. I think that is clear in the strategic plan. There are certain key words. And what we're saying is, this is what we've learned in HIV, and we're going to help you to bridge this gap. We can connect you. We can help you build community. We can help you understand how to learn about the new disease. We can help you translate that and connect you to the other person. We're not now going to become a dengue specialist and which mosquito and all these different diseases. I'm not a diabetes expert by any means, but we need to understand that the access issues for insulin are still within the same ridiculous IP system, and we do not have a people-centered.
Or mental health.
Yes. Yeah. Mental health, absolutely, completely ignored. So when you find somebody who is crying on the ground because they can't feed their children and you want to talk about viral load, you're irrelevant, right? So we
100%.
need to go back to what is it that ITPC does well, and how do we apply that thing to the crisis in front of us? And that's what may look like a new strategic plan, but in fact, it's going back to our original seed.
Roots.
Exactly.
Our roots are at the time when people were dying of AIDS, like in hundreds. And AIDS is still here.
Yeah.
AIDS is not over. This is one of our T-shirts that says AIDS is not over.
Correct.
But here right now at this conference in our region, there is like this thing, and WHO uses this term, advanced HIV disease. All right. And some of the activists and people on the ground with whom we have been talking, they were like, what the hell is advanced HIV disease? Why we stopped saying AIDS? Is it then an attempt from the politicians to make the agenda more vague and remove the focus from the urgency of the fact that AIDS is still there, because they have committed to end it by 2030, and now they have to pretend they are doing it?
Yeah.
So AIDS or advanced HIV disease, or both, and which one do you think is more relevant?
What is advanced HIV disease but not AIDS? I think you need to call a spade a spade. AIDS is AIDS, and I think it's I mean, I could speculate and we could have more than 10 minutes here on conspiracy theories of potentially why it's been called advanced HIV disease. Maybe that's
people would like, that's going to be clickbaiting, like we're going to, like, why?
Exactly. Maybe not today. But yeah, maybe there are some political ramifications to make, better to say it's advanced HIV disease. But I think it was also that same trend of over medicalization of things, right? Like why are you going to change it from AIDS now to advanced HIV disease? Because I literally, when I first heard the term, I was like, oh, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wait, are you talking about AIDS? Right? So I am in the same space with you. And I think the community has, and the Fight AIDS Coalition in particular has said, we're going to reclaim that word because it's about the mortality. People are dying of AIDS still. And that's because, again, we don't have access to the diagnostics and the proper treatment, and they don't have a rounded clinical space that includes community in the health team. So that when you go back, you could look for quick signs and symptoms or side effects, or like, we need to take you in today because you're not doing so well. But they have over medicalized the whole thing. So from the diagnostics lack of access, the treatment lack of access in terms of how do people living with HIV, when they're really sick and they get AIDS, what do they die of?
Yep.
Cryptococcal meningitis, as people have said, people that's gone because they think that was things in the 80s. People are still dying of that. So how do we bring that back? I think we need to start just calling it AIDS. I've never in any of my speeches said advanced HIV disease. You need to say AIDS.
All right, good. What community activities require more support and why? Are you raising this issue of funding here at this conference? And if you are sort of pushing any donors for funding, what are the priorities?
So what are the priorities? But yes, we need more money. Not only ITPC, but the whole movement. We always need more money.
We are not pitching for funding at the moment.
Not pitching
not through this podcast.
Not
from you guys.
We are talking about if we had more money, what would we use it for and what kinds of activities? Look, I think there's always this fracturing. Every donor has their own interests. Who wants to talk about pediatrics today, and they want to talk about lenacapavir tomorrow, and then they want to talk about community-led monitoring the next day. It changes with the wave. But I think what we constantly are underfunded for, and we will never stop needing more money for, advocacy. It is completely ignored and is not seen as a skill. Anybody can do advocacy, when we know that's not the case. It is an actual built skill. There are models of how you carry out advocacy, and you can't just say yes and then the advocacy will happen. It actually has to be funded. You have meetings to go to, you have to do power mapping, you have to have a strategy, you have to go to events, you have to have a proper, sometimes it's a campaign, sometimes it's not a campaign, but it's an actual science and an art, and that stuff needs to be funded. So I would say advocacy, advocacy, advocacy. I could come up with other things which would sound cool, but at the end of the day, those things will always get the attention of these little donors who like shiny new toys.
Yeah.
Advocacy, always
Fashion
struggling.
trends.
Yes.
Fashion trends
yes.
come and go. I agree. How many years it's been since you've started your HIV work?
Oh my God, since 2008.
2008?
2008. I was at the HIV Collaborative Fund.
Yeah.
And we were giving money. And Eastern Europe, Central Asia was the first region. And David Barr back in the day. And then he asked me, do you think we should start back ITPC? And I was like, what's an ITPC? So here we are.
So 2008, it's 2024. What still keeps you driving?
Huh. That's a good question. I do this because I really see. This might not be the right answer you want me to give, but
I want a fair answer.
I see God in everybody. I feel like everybody has a right to life and a right to get medicine and access to something that would save their lives. And it's really unfair when systems oppress. That gets me upset completely. So I will continue to fight till we stop that. I'm emotional.
That's the best moment to finish it. Thank you, guys.